Maybe it's the days shorter than days should ever be. Or maybe it's the night that has you feeling alone. Maybe it's this city dressed up in all her finery, or the year that passed in the blink of an eye. Reminders of promises they couldn't keep, but whatever the reason has you down, let your heart be light, let your spirit rise in the deepest, darkest hour of the night, and let us keep hope. Let us raise our voices louder than we thought. Our heavy hearts will allow us. Let us be guided by kindness and grace. Let us be good for goodness' sake.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Quiet Happiness Knits YouTube channel, where I talk about what I'm working on, what I'm knitting, and what yarn I'm using, and my love for knitting and wool in general. Welcome to the woods behind my house. It is a little breezy today, but it's hot. So I didn't really want to sit out in the field where it's nice and sunny, so hopefully I'm hoping that the noise of the breeze is calming rather than abrasive. I sat close to the camera, so hopefully that will balance it out a little. And yes, so I live in Maine, and I'm sitting here in the woods. There's a literal stream behind me. At some point there will be some video clips. I'm definitely not in the middle of nowhere. Like, I can see my house, I can see other houses, I can hear traffic on the road, but something about like being in the woods, it's like you're in a whole different place. So here we are, welcome to my woods. Friends, there's so much. There is just so much right now. And I can feel myself in my privileged life wanting to slide back into like apathy and not paying attention, and I'm really trying to fight that. So I don't know. I don't really have words to say about everything that's going on in the world with pandemic and government decisions and the racism that is becoming just, it always has been too much in that respect. The conversations that are happening and the way that people are reacting, and I'm not an expert. I'm not doing everything that I can and should be doing to study and educate myself, and I know that. So I'm not an expert. And I think right now we need to listen to people who study these things and have been teaching on racism and have been studying it for years and are really putting so much emotional labor into this work. It's not my job to educate people. It is my job, I think, right now to listen to people who know what they're talking about and to just keep working on myself and calling it out calling out racism when I see it, engaging in conversations about it with people in my real life, instead of, I don't want anything I do to be performative. I don't want to do any, to feel like I'm virtue signaling by sharing certain things, like by sharing posts on my knitting Instagram, which is kind of mostly full of people who would agree with whatever I'm sharing. And so I don't want to just share things to be like, look, I'm a good person. Yeah. And I'm learning, I'm working on, how do I put this? I'm working on, Brene Brown said it really well. I was listening to her podcast the other day, and she said, I need to remind myself that I'm here to get it right. I'm not here to be right. So that is something that I've really been working on, is that I am here to learn. I'm here to listen. I need to let go of always wanting to be right, and to work on finding out answers, being willing to change my mind when I find out new information or hear new perspectives. Basically, and also that this doesn't go away. The learning should never go away. Feeling like I don't know what to do is never going to go away. Feeling like there's so much I don't know is never going to go away. I don't know, when I was younger, I kind of thought that, like, once I'm an adult, I'll have things figured out, and that is hilarious, because I'm 24, and I feel like I know less now than I did 4 years ago, and I know that people who are older than I have said the same thing. The older you get, the more you find out you don't know. So I've just been working on that, and just doing my best to listen. I'll put some links in the show notes down below here on YouTube of different people that I've been following and have really been learning a lot from. Rachel Cargill is probably the biggest one right now. She does so much work on Instagram, and I find her, the way that she will share things that people have said to her, things that people comment on her social media, and sharing those and kind of breaking down maybe what's problematic about it, or things that are good that people do. And she posts a lot of resources, so Rachel Cargill has been a big one. Austin Channing Brown's work is so good. And basically, and I know for me and for a lot of people, you want like action steps, but this is not, becoming anti-racist is not something that you can break down into 10 steps and check it off and be done with it. So I'm just making a conscious effort, and this is something I've been working on for a while, but I've kind of doubled down on making an effort to be reading more books by people of color, and not just books about racism, anti-racism, and things in that genre, in that non-fiction sphere, but also fiction and short stories and just more books like that. And to be, and in my knitting and crafting world, to be supporting people of color, whether that be designers or yarn dyers or yarn shops, to just be more intentional about that. And I know when it can be a lot when people are sharing resources, like on Instagram. A lot of people were sharing a lot of great lists of books and documentaries and yarn dyers and yarn shops, and it can be hard to digest all of that right away. But that's where I know for me the saved posts on Instagram really come in handy, because then I can save it and I can go back and look at it when I'm ready to make a purchase, when I have some time to watch a documentary. So that's what I've been doing. And if you want, I can send those posts if you would like, some of the book lists I've been looking at. But yeah, just trying to do a little bit every day. Now the sun is shining directly on my face, so that's fun. So yeah, I thought I just grabbed a couple of the projects that I've been working on, so I will talk about those, and then I have a poem that I'm going to read towards the end. So yeah, so get settled in, get ready, we'll talk about some knitting, and then I will read a poem, and then that will be it for me from my woods. So the first project I'm going to talk about is actually a finished object. This is the Bennet Sisters shawl by Lindsay of Lost and Fond. And it is a triangle shawl. It's knit from one tip. You increase to the middle and then you decrease to the other end. And the pattern is written so that you hold, for half of the shawl, you hold your fingering weight yarn doubled with mohair, and then the second half of the shawl you just knit with the fingering weight yarn. So the yarn that I used, the fingering weight I used is from On the Round. It's her, I forget what base it is, but it's her Always a Bridesmaid colorway, which is this beautiful white, slightly cream base with mostly purple and pink speckles, but every once in a while you get some yellow and some orange and some teal speckles in there, which is just gorgeous. So I had this yarn. I bought 2 skeins of it a while ago, and I knit myself a short sleeve cardigan. And then realized that I do not wear short sleeve cardigans. If I am cold enough to want a sweater, I reach for something that has 3/4 length sleeves or long sleeves. And if it's warm enough so that I want something short sleeved, I'm not really putting a sweater on. So it just didn't work, and like I've knit myself a vest before and I never wore it. Like it's just not, it just feels like something I'm putting on just to wear it, but it's not functional for me. But I love the yarn, so I frogged the yarn, and then I'd been wanting to knit this shawl for a while, but then I forget what her actual name is, but Huga Canyon on Instagram is hosting a summer literary knit along, and so she has a list of patterns that are that qualify to enter into this knit along. And so the Bennet Sisters shawl, being based on the Bennet Sisters and Pride and Prejudice, was one of the patterns. So that finally gave me the kick I needed to cast it on. But then I couldn't decide if I wanted to knit it with the mohair or not at first. The only other time I've knit with mohair, it was like a thick, like a Rowan, I think it was Rowan Kid Silk Haze or something, that was some sort of silk mohair blend, and I did not like it. It was a combination of, I'd never really knit with mohair before, and it was very, very fluffy, and it was like multiple strands of silk and mohair kind of together. It was a thicker yarn, and it was, so I didn't really like the yarn. I was knitting a pattern I didn't really like for someone else. So it was just like a combination of things that just did not make for good knitting. Anyway, so I couldn't decide if I wanted to knit this with mohair. But then I was watching an Instagram live video from String Things Studios, and she was showing off some yarn from the Wandering Flock that they had a virtual trunk show for, and they still had some yarn left. And so then I went and looked at what yarns they had and saw this mohair. I didn't bring the rest of the skein down with me, but the color is called Dusty Rose, and I'd been thinking if I wanted to do mohair, I wanted it to pick up the pinks, kind of the pinks and creamy pinks that were in the fingering weight yarn, and this yarn looked like it was going to match perfectly with the dusty pink speckles in this yarn, and it did. And I absolutely loved working with the mohair and the fingering weight together. I get it now. Like, I know knitting things with held double with mohair has been really popular for a while now, but I just had never really gotten into it. Plus the fact that mohair can be expensive. Like if you want to buy a hand-dyed skein of mohair to go with a hand-dyed skein of fingering weight yarn or something, like it can add up really quickly. But I think this shawl is a really fun way to test it out and to I only needed one skein of the mohair and I already had the fingering weight yarn, so I only had to buy the mohair to go with this, and I love how it turned out. So the way the pattern is written, you start with just the regular fingering weight, you increase, and then halfway through you start holding the mohair double. I looked through some other people's project pages, and I decided that I would rather knit the mohair side first, because your gauge does change when you're holding it with the mohair. So I didn't want to run out of yarn, so I figured if I used half of my yarn in the mohair section, I would have more than enough to finish the other half. So I cast on with the mohair instead, and then knit and finish it off just with this. And I very intentionally knit this side looser to make sure that it would not be like a lot smaller than the mohair side, and it actually turned out that my fingering weight side is a little bit bigger. I could have gone up a needle size, but I cannot for the life of me find my size 6 needles. I've looked in all of my project bags, I have looked under my bed, I have looked where I keep all my needles. I cannot find my size 6 circular needles. They disappeared. So I used the size 5 needle. And the original pattern does include tassels on the ends and in the middle. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet. I think I would have enough yarn to do it with the mohair, but I haven't decided. I don't think I own any clothing that has tassels on it, so I'm not sure how I would feel about that. But I love how it came out. It's nice. It is very warm, so I will not keep this on for long. But it fits really well. Triangle shawls are ones that I find really easy to wear, and they're the ones I've made the most and wear the most. And I like how they're nice and full, so they are really nice and warm in the winter, but then you can kind of, like, if you want to wear inside, you can kind of loosen up the top and then just wear it. And it doesn't, it just looks really nice. I love shawls. So that is my Bennet Sisters shawl, and honestly it feels like the shawl knit itself because it went so quickly and it was so fun. And I love that you can still see the speckles in the mohair, because that was one thing when I was choosing mohair. I wanted to still be able to see the speckles in the yarn, and I really think these went super well together. I'm hoping it doesn't rain on me. It was supposed to rain this morning and this afternoon. The rain this morning missed us, so we'll see. So, I pretty much always have a pair of socks on the needles. I find them to be a really good, that sounds like thunder, we'll see. I just love knitting socks. I can always use more socks myself, or they make good gift knits. I kind of have a basket on one of my shelves in my room where I put finished objects that I haven't worn yet that might make good gifts if I need to pull them out. So right now I'm almost done with these, but the socks I'm knitting are the Pebbles and Pathway socks by Mars of Hey Brownberry. So this is the first one, and I'm on the ribbing of the second one, so I'm almost done. The yarn, the purple is it's Malabrigo sock, which is superwash merino wool. And then for the heels, toes, and cuffs, I'm using a mini skein that I bought from Mother of Pearl in Freeport, Maine. I don't know, I'm holding this up, there's no way you can see it. One of the co-owners of that store dyes yarn. It's called Blue Moon Yarn, and I know they have an online shop up right now. I haven't gone on to look to see what they have, but it's usually you can only buy it like in the store. And and she doesn't like repeat colorways or anything. So I'm on their email list, and they had emailed a while ago, and they were selling like kind of grab bags of mini skeins. So I bought some, thinking some of them I could use as heels, toes, and cuffs, or incorporate into other scrappy projects, or put them into my my Cozy Memories blanket, which I've been working on for years. And I'm not entirely certain I ever want to finish it, because it's such a good, when I feel like I don't want to work on anything else, or things are, different projects are like, oh well, I have to do short rows on that one, and I have to do this on that one, and whatever. When I want some good, relaxing knitting, I always pull that out. But anyway, so the heels, toes, and cuffs are this, so actually I bought this, and then I went and had to buy some purple yarn to go with it. So the heels, toes, and cuffs are this beautiful, it's like some different colors of green and teal and pink and purple. And I am knitting these on some, I believe they're called, they're from Addie, but I think they're called Flexi Flips, that were given to me by a knitter who had bought them, and they didn't really work out for her, but she thought that I would like trying them, and I really like them. You get the benefits of Magic Loop without the cable of this long circular needle that you have with Magic Loop. I learned how to knit in the round on double pointed needles, and then I learned Magic Loop a few years ago, and I also now use a 9-inch circular for socks sometimes. Sometimes which one I use just depends on whatever's closest, whatever's free, whatever I'm not using. I do have some preferences. I don't like Magic Loop for color work. I find that going, like the join between the two needles, because your knitting on one side is flat, and I don't like trying to carry the floats across. It never works out for me. So if I'm doing anything with color work, I prefer DPNs or my 9-inch circulars. But I do like having less needles to manage with the Magic Loop. The 9-inch circulars are really good for something that's kind of mindless, but if it's an intricate stitch pattern, you don't have as much flexibility with moving your needles around. So I pick my DPNs usually if it's something that has a more intricate pattern. But I don't like, the cord always gets in my way when I'm doing Magic Loop, and I find it kind of annoying. And then you have to switch, and you have to like pull it all the way through. So I'm not a big Magic Loop person. But with these, you get the benefit of having less needles, but you don't have the cable. So how they work is that you have the needle tips on each end, and then just this short little flexible cord. It is just like a circular needle cord. So that when you're knitting, so like I knit them like this, so then this is the needle I'm not using. You just knit across like you would with DPNs. You only have 3 needles to manage. And actually, I hadn't noticed this until I heard somebody else talking about it, but one of the tips is a little more pointy than the other one. So one is more blunt, one is a little bit more pointed. So the fact that I hadn't noticed it means it's not super obvious. Or when I knit socks, I'm not paying attention to my knitting, I'm paying attention to like the book I'm reading. But once I figured that out, I realized that I could make that work for the cables that are in the sock. So the sock, it has a twisted stitch column on the side, cables, and garter stitch across the middle. And I generally do cabling without a cable needle. So I've been using the more sharp side. If it's a cable round, then I check my needle and I try to remember to use the more sharp side. Like, it works just fine on the other side, but it makes it a little bit easier to pick up the stitches that I need. So I've been really enjoying my Flexi Flips, and I will definitely use them in the future. And I also just love this mini skein so much. So those are the socks. Pardon me while I adjust, my foot has fallen asleep. So those are the socks that I am working on. They're almost done. I'm not sure what socks I'll cast on when I'm done with those ones. I've been looking at a lot of Dawn Landix's sock patterns, I'm thinking I want to find something to incorporate one of the other mini skeins that I bought in that bundle, but something that includes it in the pattern, not just heels, toes, and cuffs. So Dawn Landix, I think it was her Witch's Brew pattern, has a really cool leg that would incorporate a mini skein. I believe it's called the Pop Rocks socks just came out. I forget the name of the designer, but those would be a really fun way also to use up some scrap yarn. So, haven't decided yet. We will see. The last project that I will talk about is just a little baby project. This is the it isn't really yet. It will be the Osmond shawl by Beatrice Perrin-Dolan, who is Thread and Ladle is her design name. If you are a longtime viewer, you may remember that a couple years ago, I absolutely loved the book that she came out with called Maine Knits, where she had a ton of Maine knitting designers contribute patterns, and the photography was gorgeous, and I pretty much had a pattern from that book on my needles for like a year. But her designs are beautiful, and actually the yarn, she had done some botanical yarn dyeing for a little while, and had created kits for the shawl. It's a two-color shawl, kind of a light, airy crescent-shaped shawl. So the yarn is, I believe it's a lace weight or a heavy lace weight, and it's a single ply, so it's nice, fluffy, soft yarn. So I purchased the brown kit because I realized I don't really have a brown shawl. I have gray, but I don't have brown. So I thought it would make it for a nice neutral colored shawl. So I'm knitting the first part with this lighter brown, and then I'll pull in this warmer, darker brown for the second color. So this has kind of been my work knitting. I've been working from home. I'm a staff accountant at a firm here in Maine, and so a lot of what I do involves like putting things into our tax software and then calculating it, and it takes it like anywhere between 3 to 10 seconds to calculate. And so what I've been doing since I've been home is I'll just keep a really easy knitting project on my desk, and then I'll pick it up and just knit even just a couple of stitches while it calculates. Keeps me from like obsessively checking my email or picking up my phone or something. It just, like, while things calculate or upload or I'm waiting for things to open, I just pick it up and knit a couple of stitches, and it's been so fun. I really like doing that. My job does not involve a lot of like phone calls or video calls or anything, so I don't necessarily do a lot of like Zoom knitting. I think I've only used Zoom for like social events, not actually for work. Because I don't like using it most of the time. But anyway, so I haven't only knit this while I've been working, but primarily that's when I work on this. Because right now it's this really simple garter stitch, and on the right side you do some increase and a decrease. So yeah, and it's fun. It's been fun to work with the botanically dyed yarn. You get like some really subtle variations like you would with a hand dyed yarn. So yeah, that is just my easy contemplative knitting project. So now, hopefully before it rains, I have a poem that I would like to read to you. I do not read a ton of poetry. It's something I would like to read more. But it's kind of odd because on the one hand, I can like for me, I can't just like read 5 poems. I can read 5 pages in a book. I can read 5 chapters in a book. But like to just sit down and read 5 poems in a row just feels weird. So like a book of poetry, I feel like it would take me a really long time to get through it because I kind of want to think about each poem. I don't know. It's just one of those hurdles. I want to be I want to be the kind of person who reads poetry, but I have not yet put in the effort to be the kind of person who reads poetry, if that makes sense. But I was listening to the audiobook of Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. And it's really good. I highly recommend it. And if you can, do the audiobook version, because Jacqueline Woodson herself reads it. And so much of it is either it is poetry or it's just very lyrical. And listening to it, I don't know what it looks like on the page, so I don't know how much of it is in a poem structure. But it's about her life. It's about her growing up, being a young girl, and her experiences as a person of color, as a black person growing up. And I don't normally do like bookmarks in my audiobooks, but I definitely bookmarked a few sections of Brown Girl Dreaming while I was listening. And one of the chapters, poems, whatever you want to call it, is called "What Everybody Knows Now." I'll have the poem in the description box in case you want to read along while I'm reading it. I'm going to have some video clips to show you while I read this. So I listened to what is the name of his podcast? It's LeVar Burton. No, yeah, it's just LeVar Burton Reads. If you're in my generation, you remember him as the Reading Rainbow guy. But he reads short stories in his podcast, and every time he begins by taking a deep breath, and it makes me so happy. So, that is what we'll do. So, let's take a deep breath. And I will read What Everybody Knows Now by Jacqueline Woodson. Even though the laws have changed, my grandmother still takes us to the back of the bus when we go downtown in the rain. It's easier, my grandmother says, than having white folks look at me like I'm dirt. But we aren't dirt. We are people paying the same fare as other people. When I say this to my grandmother, she nods, says, easier to stay where you belong. I look around and see the ones who walk straight to the back, see the ones who take a seat up front, daring anyone to make them move. And know this is who I want to be. Not scared like that. Brave like that. Still, my grandmother takes my hand downtown, pulls me right past the restaurants that have to let us sit wherever we want now. No need in making trouble, she says. You all go back to New York City, but I have to live here. We walk straight past Woolworth's without even looking in the windows, because the one time my grandmother went inside, they made her wait and wait. Acted like I wasn't even there. It's hard not to see the moment. My grandmother in her Sunday clothes, a hat with a flower pinned to it, neatly on her head, her patent leather purse perfectly clasped between her gloved hands, waiting quietly long past her turn. So that was What Everybody Knows Now by Jacqueline Woodson. So I hope that you have enjoyed being in the woods with me today. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that you are always learning and always making. See you next time.
If you're feeling forgotten, like you're among strangers, and you've lost the only way you know how. If you're feeling restless and this all seems endless, those sleepless nights in front of our screens, searching for something beyond our reach, whatever the reason has you down, let your heart be light, let your spirit rise in the deepest, darkest hour. Let us be good for